I made a comment about professionalism, and actually I was talking to Allison earlier about this. The idea that like once you're a professional, there's kind of a shift that happens in your thinking. And I know a lot of people that literally won't, if it doesn't come from like the New York Times or one of their like industry publications or someone that's credentialed or whatever, it doesn't have any merit. It doesn't have any value, doesn't have any meaning. Even like the testimony of like a poor person, whatever, I need to know what the experts have to say about their personal experience or whatever. And so, but it's a brainwashing, is a mental thing that happens. And there's a guy named Jeff Schmidt that wrote a book called Disciplined Minds that I've really pushed on a lot of people. But he was looking at what it means to be a professional, and he says the people in society who have the most creative freedom are actually conditioned to be the less likely to actually use that. So they have they're put into positions of somewhat decision making power, but they've already been conditioned to make the decisions that they're supposed to make within the box, within the framework. And I would like to do another show about this. The show didn't come out quite as good as I was hoping, but it's still good. It was so it's good. But I did a show of Disciplined Minds on the professional class called Truth, Lies, and Ethics. And this is if you just look this up on my YouTube channel, episode 16. I had the author, Jeff Schmidt, and then on the bottom, it's kind of dark. He didn't have a light on, but that's my friend Francis Newman, who was a chief physicist at University of Colorado Hospital. And actually, I've been good friends with him for many years, but he's taught me a lot about the medical world and some of the problems with that. And then my friend Sherry Honkala, who's an anti-poverty, a homeless organizer of homeless people and poor people in Philadelphia, and she's dealt a lot with the profession, the political professionals, be it in nonprofits or in like the Democratic Party. And of course, the Republican Party has their own version of it, which looks different, but they're still dirty. But anyway, so if you get a chance, check out this show, because there is some pretty interesting stuff, and it's something that I actually want to do a lot more on, because that really is something that's not talked about. Like Jeff Schmidt's book is the only one that I know that starts to like take a critical look at the professional class. So, anyways, I thought I'd throw that up there. Um, so, Allison, did
Can
you?
I just chime in? So, like, part of our conversation today about this was there was someone who had written a piece about the blockchain ID program in Ethiopia. And this was someone who had like many credentials around AI and ethics. And so they had written this piece, but of course had nothing about social impact finance. It had nothing about ties between Cardano and Hanson Robotics and blockchain mines and Singularity.net. It was just at a very superficial level, even though this person was an expert, right? And they had, I don't know, in their byline, 4 or 5 different organizations that they were affiliated with. And so I was sort of like calling them out on it. I was like, you need to dig deeper into this because there's more going on. And, the person, like, essentially, like, they did message me. I'll give them that, but when I pushed, I said, you don't know about impact finance, you don't know about the digital twins, and they said, well, that's just not my area of expertise. Sort of like in a, like, not that tell me more like, well, that's just the end of that, because my area of expertise ends here, and so this is all I do. I do this. And for me, that's so frustrating because, like, I'm like this, like, I do all of the things, I'm like a little bit of everything. And like, let's try to like lay it out and make sense of what this actually is. And for the most part, people who are, rewarded for being experts, they pick a little thing and then they talk about it. And, you'll look up the talks that they give, and for the most part, like 80% of the content of the talk is all the same. And then like maybe they'll add in a few other things, but like this is their shtick. They talk about this one thing. And so there's no incentive for really broad synthetic thinking or thought, because if you start to creep over and you're the expert and you've got the social acclaim and the financial rewards of being the expert, you have no incentive to go over and look into somebody else's expertise, because by doing that and presuming that you could go into their space and understand it, you are essentially undercutting your own status, undercutting the role of the expert. And so, for me, I found on this journey over the last 5 years, and I'm somebody who has, like I have an advanced degree, and I was really dumb about most of the things in the world. Like I didn't have no clue of all the things I didn't know. The people who taught me the most were people who often um, have their knowledge based in direct life experience and or followed non-traditional educational paths. And I will just say that, like, those are the people who actually have the most curious minds. And that's the thing. I feel like in many respects we're lacking in the educational process, is the curiosity and then the confidence to say, I can have original thoughts, and the thoughts I think matter, if not to the world, then to me. Like, and there's satisfaction in thinking about these things and trying to put things together, because for the most part, like, the world is about consuming. It's about consuming pre-packaged information and not actually coming up with your own ideas. So, anyway, I guess this has to do with later. We'll talk more about the school stuff, but I've mentioned this book a number of times called The Diamond Age, Neil Stephenson's book, and in the opening of that, essentially the entire story gets underway when an elite venture capitalist hires a bespoke design engineer to create a digital tutorial tablet, which is like an iPad, but this is 1995, so general people don't know about the iPads yet, to be their tutor, to be the granddaughter's tutor. And his goal is that he thinks that the children are being miseducated and having all of the creativity taken from them. And so he wants this, ironically, device to teach his granddaughter to be a more of a creative thinker, and to have that be her education. And then the story proceeds from there. But anyway, don't get your education from a tablet. Actually, yeah, just don't do that. It's a bad idea. But it was interesting to see how that was sort of presaged. Essentially, they were identifying the nature of the problem,
Hmm.
the tyranny of the experts.
Yeah. Yeah. Where'd that term come from? Tyranny of experts? Because that actually would be a good place for a source for me to. Do you know where that term comes from? Because that is
No.
essentially kind of partly what I'm talking about. I do have
I
your.
think they said something about too being credentialed into ignorance.
Oh, right. Well, and I noticed that, a long time ago because I've been a self-learner. I never went to college. I barely graduated high school. But, I think I'm a fairly smart guy, but I'm self-directed. Like in high school, like, I read books. I've always, read periodically throughout life, and, sometimes more than others, depending on if I was, what I was in, but I've always read like mostly nonfiction books, and I've always been a curious person. And I noticed that like the people that I knew that had the highest degrees of education were like the most difficult to get to understand something that was so I'm gonna say it's obvious to me, but like, um, yeah, there's an obstacle. There's a learning disability associated with high level degrees. That sounds terrible, but it's true. I'm sorry, but it's true. Um, but they know a lot more about a lot of stuff that I don't know, that I don't need to know
Well,
necessarily.
often they know a whole lot about a little thing,
Right.
because that's what gets rewarded with a high level academic context is specialty. You specialize.
Right.
And so we have a world of specialists who don't actually have any idea what's really going on,
Yeah.
because they don't know what their specialty connects to.
Another thing I found interesting about, and Jeff Schmidt mentioned this in his book, is how how he says that academia favors like the theoretical sciences and the theoretical over the like experiential and observational. And he's a physics guy, so he was noticing that. But I've seen that especially and most prominently in economics, because economics is built, like most of it's built on
The fiction.
theoretical models, and then they find information to support the theory, rather than just to say, okay, let's just like forget about the theory, like let's just start from just like taking a look and see what's going on here. So I don't know,
Because
I
it's
thought,
all fake.
yeah, it
They have to make up the theories because they're just writing the story.